6:01 actually. So I would like to call the meeting to order for the public hearing. Oh. Okay, it's 6:31, probably 6:32 by now. We're calling to order the public hearing for ordinance 556. And Mr. Walton, would you please explain that ordinance for us? And then we will take public comments.
Sure, the ordinance is relatively straightforward. You have a home occupation are allowed in certain districts within the city. I can go back and look up which ones, but there's home occupations in certain districts. They're not allowed in the historic district. The ordinance, which is proposed, proposes to allow the home occupations in the historic district with the same caveats and reservations as they would in the other districts in which they're allowed. Pretty much that's it.
Thank you. Do we have people here that want to make public comments regarding that ordinance only? Okay,
May I ask what the caveats are in the rest of the town?
Good second.
Can you state your name, please?
Tracy Keenan, West Third Street.
Could you spell your last name?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I can read.
A-I-N-A.
oh,
Right. It's the ones listed in the ordinance, correct?
Yeah. Mhm. Thank you.
So listed in the ordinance, it says home occupation such as an art studio, dressmaking, and professional office of a lawyer, engineer, architect, or certified public accountant are permitted accessory uses in the R2 and R3 residential zoning district.
Thank you.
and thank you.
I don't want to think of.
no one else wants to make a public, because I have two I need to read. And we'll read those, and we'll see if anybody else shows up. This is from Tara Hayward on 114 East 3rd Street. Dear Commissioners, I'm writing to express my concern regarding ordinance number 2025-556, which proposes to amend the City of Newcastle zoning code, chapter 230, to allow home occupations as permitted accessory uses within the historic residence zoning district. While I appreciate the intent of the ordinance and its assertion that home occupations preserve residential character, I am concerned that it does not explicitly reference the preservation standards or oversight mechanisms already in place to protect the historic integrity of properties within the HR district. To strengthen the ordinance and ensure alignment with existing policies, I respectfully recommend the inclusion of an additional clause under section 1 or the creation of a new subsection 230-19A8, such as home occupation shall be conducted in a manner as to preserve the historic and residential character of the structure in the historic residence district. No external alterations, signage, or displays shall be permitted that alter the historic facade or character of the premises. Any exterior changes shall be subject to review and approval by the Historic Area Commission in accordance with section 230-45A of the City Code. This addition would clarify that historic protections remain fully applicable and would provide assurance to residents that any future home occupation use will be compatible with the longstanding character and integrity of the district. Thank you for your thoughtful consideration of this recommendation. And then this one is from Ron Stach. He's at 104 East 3rd Street. Commissioners, I am a resident and homeowner in the historic district regarding the proposed ordinance to amend the zoning code for home occupations in the HR district. I have two fundamental questions. Why now? I think they were just answered by Mr. Walton. Tax-paying voting citizens of this town deserve to understand the reasoning behind new legislation, what prompted it, who is behind it, and why is it being prioritized now? Was this ordinance prompted by a politician, by an existing business such as a yoga studio allegedly operating illegally, or by the rumored fitness operation looking to use the old public library? These are not compelling or justifiable reasons to move forward with legislation that, in my view, is vague at best and unenforceable at worst. While I'm not a policy expert, I want to raise several concerns with the draft ordinance as written. Enforcement ambiguity. Section 1G states the home occupations must not generate traffic volumes or hazards beyond what is typically expected in a residential district. What does that actually mean in practice? Who determines what is typical? How can our already overburdened enforcement staff be expected to apply or monitor this standard fairly? Limited and outdated examples. Ordinance lists only a handful of acceptable home occupations such as dressmakers or artists. Why these specific professions? Who determines what else is allowed? What about modern professions like music instructors offering group lessons or composers using amplified sound? These examples don't reflect the realities of a digitally connected contemporary workforce. Unhelpful prohibited examples. The few examples of prohibited uses lack specificity and offer little practical guidance, leaving too much open to interpretation. A vast gray area between the permitted and prohibited use lies a large gray zone. Where would the alleged illegal yoga studio fall? What about personal trainers, tattoo artists, or artisans producing goods at home like hand-dyed wool or small batch items? Fewer safeguards than short-term rentals. This ordinance seems even less restrictive than existing regulations for short-term rentals, despite having the potential for equal or greater impact. There is no cap on the number of home-based businesses, no business license requirement, no proof of insurance, no guarantee of off-street parking, no inspection process. This raises serious liability concerns for both the city and the homeowner, and I don't need to elaborate on the parking challenges we've already been dealing with. I understand the city council has referred this ordinance to the planning commission for review. However, there are too many unanswered questions about potential consequences to move the forward in its current form. I respectfully urge the commissioners to pause and reconsider before advancing this legislation. We deserve thoughtful, clear, and enforceable policy, nothing less. Thank you for your time and consideration. Would you like to speak?
Yes, okay. I can do it from here.
You need to sign it. I have another one.
Is it? Oh, that's for the other meeting,
Okay.
or the other ordinance we're working on. That's why I didn't read that one. Yeah, I have that one. So I have it in my whole till we get to their pile. Okay.
So you need to speak into the microphone. I'm very sorry because I can't hear you on the Zoom.
No, it's okay.
Yep,
Okay.
yep, sorry about that.
Yeah, I'm Nancy Day and I'm at 44th Street. And I do have the yoga studio
And speaking of
in
my
question. I have been trying for a while, to get some more information, about exactly what it is I'm doing wrong. On May 15th, I wrote a letter requesting, clarification. I didn't get a response to this letter, from May 15th. I'm seeking an answer to the question what I'm doing wrong, because I did look at the town code, section 4003.420. Not an expert, But it looks like some small home businesses are permitted as long as they follow some rules that I think that I am following. There's very little foot traffic. No one drives to the studio. There's no general public access, no retail. There is a sign, this is Harmony, but it faces my driveway, not the street. The studio at maximum or a yoga class will hold 4 people. If we squeeze in. I looked up what I could find as far as, because one of my questions was, what is incidental and customary use as it pertains to the codes? And it says in the context of housing codes in the historic Newcastle district, the terms incidental and customary refer to incidental use. Is defined as use that is subordinate to the principal use and typically located on the same lot as the principal use. And this is attached, it's part of my home. It is a room in my home. I have taught private yoga lessons for 20 years. This is not new to me. I don't actually charge money for these yoga lessons. It's strictly contribute what you'd like to. And a portion of the contributions have actually gone to the Historical Society of Newcastle. I also saw a definition for customary. And the code states that customary use refers to uses that are expected and commonly accepted as part of the normal operation of a property, often specified by zoning ordinances. In the context of the housing codes in historic Newcastle, incidental and customary refer to uses that are naturally associated with the primary use of the land. To me, this is a completely customary use of my home. It has been for over 20 years. Like I said, I have sought clarification. I spent $800 to get an appeal, to file an appeal, because I couldn't get answers to what I was doing wrong. My attorney went ahead and figured out how many parking spaces there are in my neighborhood. But again, people don't drive, they walk.
What's your address again, sorry?
I'm sorry,
Your address again?
54 East 4th Street.
Question. Who did you write the letters to specifically?
I sent it twice, once by regular mail and once by registered.
I mean, I believe you, just so we.
No, I've got a copy of it right here. To Antonina. May 15, 2025. I'm writing a response to your notice of unauthorized use of property in a residential district, Harmony Yoga, dated April 21st, which I had the right to appeal this determination to the city, or I would have been fined $100 for each day I had people in my yoga studio for unauthorized use. So like I say, I have been unable to determine. I do have a business license and I do have insurance.
I'm sorry, if does any of the commissioners have a question, because we're way over the 3 minutes. And I'd like to respond. There is a process within the city where you are found to be a home-based business. And there was a letter sent to you that said you're a home-based business. The appeal to that, which was filed by your attorney, will be decided by the Board of Adjustment. That, in conjunction with discussions with your attorney, was put on hold when one of the council people said, let's hear an ordinance to determine to make it allowable in the district, potentially up to the thing, and that's what we're discussing today. So we're not going to discuss sort of the merits of the thing, because that's going to be decided by the Board of Adjustment today. If the council ultimately says that you can have a home-based business within the historic district, because it's not currently allowed, then you'd be fine. But then otherwise, then you would have to move forward, and we would move forward, have an appeal before the Board of Adjustment, who will decide the substantive issues.
Okay, just to make sure that I understand you, so I have filed that appeal, is that the appeal that we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted the commission to understand that we're not the body that decides whether or not there's a right. It's the Board of Adjustment who decides. You guys are just commenting on the ordinance itself, on whether or not the ordinance should go forward or not.
I appreciate the honesty because we've been asking over and over, including Joe Day, who wouldn't say why he did this. And there's been a lot of stuff that city council has done that seems to be oriented to solving one person's problem, and especially in the historic district. And I think that is problematic. But thank you for clarifying that that's why it happened.
Do we have any other comments regarding ordinance 556?
We're going to discuss this.
In the meeting, yeah. Only 556. If you're gonna talk about something else, okay.
Talking about something else. Carol Vukolich, I live at 33 The Strand. I think the presentation that we just heard suggests that there is some conflicting information in the code that needs to be looked at. I find it challenging. Well, the whereases were problematic for me because it talks about, for example, that the city council has determined, in quotes, that it's in the best interest of the city and its residents to amend the city code to expressly allow home occupation. What was the, what information did they use to make that determination? I don't know. I think that we all deserve an answer to that question. It also then goes on to say that the home occupation in the historic resident district will, in quotes, enhance and promote the health, safety, and welfare of the HR district's residents. Based on what data? I wasn't invited to participate in a survey. I wasn't asked to come to an open hearing where this was discussed. So it seems like there are some challenges that need to be addressed. I think Ron's letter identified that the list of businesses, and Max just said, well, if this is approved, then the yoga studio is okay. Based on what? What are the criteria that makes a business in the historic resident district acceptable and unacceptable? To have a list of outdated, as Ron identified, businesses? I don't know. Anybody do dressmaking anymore? I kind of don't think so. So it seems to me that you all as commissioners, you know, you represent us. So surely you have these same questions that you want answered before you take a vote. And before you begin to consider what are the criteria that make for acceptable and unacceptable businesses. I also wonder, like, okay, we said it's okay, like it's okay in other districts. We should make it okay here. Maybe, but maybe people who live in the other districts would prefer not to have it in their district. Why aren't we investigating the holistic nature of this rather than just charging forward in order to address somebody's pet peeve about some business? I think there are some real problems with this particular ordinance. Thank you.
So I'd like to address it very briefly. A couple of your comments about the whereas clauses. The ordinances are generally written that way. The council hasn't made a finding. You guys are going to make the finding of whether or not it's in the best interest or your recommendation. The council's going to do it. The reason we have these public hearings, and there'll be one here before the planning commission, and there'll be another one before the city council. Excuse me, I'm going to need my water. And that's the reason that we have them. So that's the time for people to come and speak like yourself.
Thanks.
Madam Chair, just to clarify too, there are embedded in the definition of home occupation, really listed the conditions, other conditions that weren't mentioned this evening. For example, A is customarily carried on in a dwelling or building other than or other structure.
Would you like?
It's really hard to hear.
I was just saying that embedded in the definition of home occupation are what amount to be the conditions that haven't been talked about. And I just wanted to add some clarity. For example, under A, under the definition of home occupation, it restricts the use to make sure that it does not comprise more than 25% of the total floor area of all structures on the lot. Is owned by a full-time resident of the dwelling unit and shall employ only other full-time residents of the dwelling unit. So, and I don't want to go through all of them, but within the definition of home occupation are the conditions that would apply that the city would use to determine the eligibility of a home occupation.
We can probably discuss that a little more when we get to that, like, on our agenda.
Do I need to leave this open till 7, well, I guess 6:15 going?
Yeah, that's fine.
This notice said that the meeting would start immediately when the public comment was finished, so I think it can go anytime.
Oh, wait a minute.
It was explicit, I read it carefully.
Oh, it says followed by the planning committee meeting at 7, so I don't think we can,
Immediately after the public hearing has ended.
which usually means if the comments run over 7 o'clock, like if we had enough people that they were talking till 7:15, then we'd start after that.
To hold it open until 6:59.
You do it.
Because we're talking about what, 5 minutes.
That makes sense.
Is there anyone else? Last call for comments on ordinance 556. Okay. Public hearing is now closed. And I am opening the meeting for the City of Newcastle Planning Commission. And I want to start with a roll call. So Cynthia, would you mind?
Cynthia Batty.
David Mieski.
Tony Williams, I can't.
Stephen Franklin.
Kristen Zumar. Margot Rain.
Marie Rivera.
Max Walton.
Katina Chantala.
Chris Rogers.
Thank you. We have a quorum. And the first order on our agenda, actually, before we jump into the agenda, there are a couple of changes. The first one is the site plan for West 7th Street has been withdrawn. That will be reviewed in August, at our August meeting. The first thing we need is the approval of the minutes for the public hearing on June 3rd and the minutes for the, is that all of it? Yeah. Or is there another one? Yes, so there's a planning, the public hearing and the minutes for the planning commission meeting. We'll start with the minutes for the hearing. Do I have any corrections to those minutes? Do I have a motion to approve those minutes? Stephen has made a motion to approve the minutes. I need a second. Thank you, Cynthia, for seconding. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Yay. Motion is carried, huh?
I'm gonna abstain, I wasn't.
Oh, and one abstention, sorry. I was
Comment
looking,
either way.
you don't know, I wasn't here, okay. Motion is approved to approve those minutes. And for the minutes of the June 3rd meeting, for the actual planning commission meeting, do I have any corrections to those minutes? Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Kristen motions to approve.
Do I have a second to approve those minutes? Stephen, thank you. All in favor of approving those minutes?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstaining? One abstention, David. Okay, thank you. Those minutes are approved. Okay, the next item on our agenda.
Madam Chair, can I just ask a question? There's a name of a new person here who's not here, and
Correct.
I somehow missed that. What's happening?
Well, she was approved by city council.
Do you want me to speak?
Please, Valerie.
Her name's Victoria Garrett. She owns a home in Buttonwood. We have since found out.
Get here. Talk to you before you say anything.
Sidebar. Right, so her name is Victoria Garrett. She lives in Buttonwood. And she's just not here tonight. And so we will make sure she's aware so she can be at the next.
Okay, thank you. Okay, discussion on ordinance 555,
Madam Chair, if I may.
please.
So just going back, I had a lot of meetings on this, so I figured we would talk about where we ended up. So at the last meeting, we had a fair amount of discussion. I'm just gonna quickly roll through what the changes were based upon our discussion. There was some discussion about the Terry House not having an issue. So there's a new definition of an inn, which the Terry House would fit under, which would be exempted from this ordinance. as you can see, a couple other small things. We added in the proof of liability insurance, made very clear that the short-term rental license is not transferable. At Cynthia's suggestion, we added some other things in for a location of fire extinguishers, bin, trash bin placement and the like, right? There's a provision there, so that there was some question about short-term rentals, like some districts could only have one or a half, so we said no more than two in a district. And there was the requirement,
Where was the new, sorry, no more than two in a district, where was that?
that's page six in red. In other words, I said it backwards, Cynthia, let me state it again, that at least two short-term rentals are allowed in each district. I was imprecise about that. So, and then there was the question of it being on the city's website, who has the rental licenses and such. As you recall, at the end of the meeting, Cynthia had some technical changes or wanted to go through. She sent those to me just as she promised. There were some that I didn't feel comfortable making as a technical change, including but not limited to changing the 270 days to 180 days, changing the word units to parcels.
Can you pick up?
Yeah, sure. I'm very sorry.
Thank
I should talk into the mic.
you.
I forget you're back there sometimes, so sorry about that. Some of the changes that were proposed that I didn't feel comfortable putting into the ordinance was changing from 270 days to 180 days, changing the words units to parcels, requiring owners to live in the city, and changing the parking requirements. Those are the ones, at least to me, that I needed commission sort of buy-in if we were gonna do something like that. So I think the easiest way to handle it is that Cynthia had a number of changes, and that we would take those proposals and then have a vote on those proposals. And then you could have a vote at the end, whether or not you refer to it or not. So let me tell you what that would mean. Whatever changes are made to this particular ordinance, it's only gonna be a recommendation anyway. We'll make whatever changes that we come up with, votes that come tonight. You can vote for it, and if you vote for it, that means it's a recommendation. If you vote nay or against it, means you don't think that any recommendation should be made, and that would be the recommendation. So with that being said, Madam Chair, I'm gonna go back to my seat unless somebody has any questions.
So can you go through those technical changes that were,
I thought I just did.
but do we need to vote on them, or are they already
No,
embedded?
they were embedded in the draft that was sent around, that I did this on June the 8th.
So the red ones we need to vote on?
No.
Oh.
No, you know, those were from our discussion points from last time.
Okay,
So in other words, I had my ordinance the last time, but as you guys were discussing stuff, I was making changes, so I tried to add in those things.
so where's the one about the 188 days?
So that was a change that Cynthia suggested in her note to me, which I felt that we had to, so, and I'll look for the section, but we say you can't rent for no more than 270 days. And Cynthia suggested 180, and I thought that was a change that needed to be considered by the commission as a whole, rather than a technical correction.
So how are you suggesting we go through those recommendations, or are we not?
For the recommendations that came out of last time, I wrote them out, put them on the agenda. They're already in there. If you don't like them, you can vote them out, but this is our start.
Okay,
Okay?
all right. And I just wanna, you could say, just be clear that, you know, it was in January that the planning commission received a request from the city council to look into Airbnb regulations. And since then, we've had approximately 5 meetings where the citizens have been asked to share their concerns. The planning commission has listened to everybody who has spoken. We've considered the evidence and the impact on the entire city. Tonight, we're gonna finish up these edits and then vote it as to whether we're gonna send this recommendation to city council or not. As Mr. Walton indicated, this is only a recommendation. whatever we send to city council could be enacted as what we send. The whole thing can be voted down, or they could do something completely different. So I just want people to understand, this is just our recommendation to the city council. This is no guarantee that anything that we vote on tonight is actually gonna happen. Okay. So you've all had a chance to look over what was sent out. What comments or questions do I have from the commission?
Take it away. On page 4, section A, it is short-term rental license are non-transferable, and if the property is sold or conveyed during the term of the rental license, the new owner shall be required to obtain a new rental license. My understanding is that there's a situation where the owner does not hold the license, but a tenant does.
That's our current situation.
So how does that, if the new purchaser retains the tenant, how does that affect the license?
So in order to get a license under this, under A, I'm just gonna read it. Prior to any residential dwelling being used as a short-term rental, the owner of the property shall register the property as short-term rental. So the owner would have to register and get the short-term rental license.
So what happens with the properties that are currently in effect? That aren't in compliance with that are
They're
not.
gonna have to come in and become in compliance.
So
That's right.
Sorry.
The current property does have the permission, does have the permission of the owner, but they would have to come into compliance with this requirement if you chose to not.
I'm sorry, the
Current property does have the permission of the property owner. So that same truth would hold.
That wasn't the question. This states clearly the owner has to do it, and I think that's what Max just
Yeah.
clarified.
Yes.
So, for instance, you have an owner that has the building and a tenant that operates the short-term rental. So are they grandfathered in until they're gonna lose their license?
They're gonna have to come in and get a new license.
But they're not eligible because they don't own the property?
The owner has to come in. They're still eligible, but the owner has to make the application.
So is it the owner then who has to have $1 million in insurance and the fire inspection and? I think that's what you're saying here.
Well, hang on a second. I think the license holder has to have it. We have to have it.
Right.
Let me look.
Thank you. Gotta watch out for Kristen. She's gonna read it, and kick your rear end every time.
So the ordinance is silent as to whether or not that can be held by a third party or not. So in other words, that in that instance, so let's say it's Max Walton, the tenant, and we'll call it my mom, who owned the property, right? And the owner does an application, the tenant could supply the insurance under that scenario.
Is there legal ramifications to the owner of the property for liability in general because they own the property versus the tenant?
Yes, there's always that liability. I have a client who is 100-year lessee, and there's a shopping center on their old farm. And every time somebody slips and falls in that shopping center, even though they only get a little bit of money, they're always sued because they are the underlying property owner. So the answer to your question is yes.
I have a comment on the insurance. They're discussing that. If the property owner has insurance, his insurer, if he knows that he is leasing it out to someone, they're gonna require that they also have liability insurance. So if they're running their business properly and they're paying their insurance and they have a reputable insurance company, both parties, if the owner is not running the property, are going to have insurance. I know that because each year I give back a certificate of insurance to share with his insurer. Doesn't have to be through the same company, but they both have to be insured. And I think that alleviates a concern that a person who's running a property could do something and it happens and he or she or the entity not be held liable.
If that's the case, thank you. They both have to have $1 million in insurance and the city has to validate that, so that probably should go into the ordinance somehow.
That's between them, if you wanna require it for both the owner and any tenant, but a tenant could be. This gets funny, right? So a tenant technically is a person who's staying there for 5 days or 3 days as a B&B owner. They become a tenant for a short period of time, so. if
We're
you-
not talking about that. We're talking about the current situation where a little local company has rented a house and is operating an Airbnb out of it. We're not asking tenants in Airbnbs to have the insurance. We're asking the operator of the short-term rental to have the insurance.
So someone would have to make a motion, a second, we could vote on that change.
I don't know if a motion needs to be made on that because insurance companies are very particular. So if you're insuring a property, they're gonna come and inspect the property. If the property is being managed by another company, that company is going to require that that entity be insured. They're gonna have to carry them as a rider as well. And I say that because I have to do this every year. So
But can they be insured for $50,000 or does the operator also have to be insured for $1 million?
they're gonna ask them to be insured for at least $1 million. I carry a $2 million rider. Because that's what the insurance company asks. What I'm trying to express here is that the insurance company will see, and if the owner of the property does not comply, he will not be insured. He will lose that insurance.
What are the regulations, I guess? My question is, somebody who owns a building and it has commercial space as well as a rental space for a short-term rental. So they are to get, the owner of that building would get yet another license for the short-term rental, because I'm assuming they need the commercial license for a store, and then they'll need to get, I don't know what other kind of license there would be for the person renting out the seconds, but then
They would need a second license.
isn't
for the
there,
rental.
but is there already a license for them to rent out that second part? They just need to change it over to a short-term rental license?
Let's assume just for a minute, we had a ground floor commercial, and upstairs had a room or an apartment. Very simple. They would need a license to rent the commercial unit on the bottom. And they would also need a license, a rental license, if it was a long-term license upstairs, but they would need it, if they wanted to do it as an Airbnb under this ordinance, they would need a separate license to operate that second floor apartment or building as an Airbnb.
So you have a third party renting out that second floor as the Airbnb, they are the manager of that Airbnb. I guess I'm asking, are there 3 licenses involved or just 2 at that point?
Just 2, because the license goes.
So they would transition over from a long-term rental, the owner of the property, to the short-term rental on behalf of the third party they're renting to.
I think that's correct, if I understand it correctly.
So let me ask this question. If it's a residential property, but so I have a residential property and I'm renting it to you, Max, and my lease says you're going to be a resident of that property. But you decide you want to now turn that into an Airbnb. That is no longer resident, it becomes a business at that
That's
point.
correct.
It would still be residential because it would be used as a B and B,
Okay,
okay? Or as B and B, as a Airbnb. And then you would still have to have a rental license to be able to rent that as the tenant or subtenant.
right.
But your point is correct, it's a business then. It's a business operating in a residential building.
Do you follow what I'm saying?
I follow what you're saying. I would say that you could still do that under the text of the current ordinance.
Suppose we add some kind of simple language that says, operators subletting property would be subject to the same requirements as an owner, or something like that.
But the ordinance says that the short-term rental license can only be given to the owner. That's what it says right now.
Correct.
So,
I'm happy with that.
yeah, so I mean, technically, it would be the owner that would have the license, and then he just hire whoever, and he just run,
As a
kind of,
manager.
yes.
So should this pass as this section is written? The person subletting who currently has short-term license, that would be nullified, and the owner of the property, I just want to make sure I understand this, would then have to apply. So if all the licenses in that district are already used and they drop off, they will not be able to get a new license.
Everything's kind of fact dependent, but yes, the way it's written is there's a limit to the number of licenses. Right, and depending on the district, and the license has to be issued to the owner. There is no technical grandfathering in the ordinance.
That's what I wanted to clarify.
Okay, I'm good with that.
Okay, what other comments or proposed changes?
On page 6,
So I would like to misstate, I misstated, and I want to state something very clearly, because what I just said was incorrect, because I'd forgotten about it. So exemptions. Under section 14, which is on the last page. Any short-term rental legally in operation and meeting all current code requirements as of the date of the introduction of this ordinance, which does not meet the requirements for off-street parking, shall be permitted to continue, provided that all other requirements of this ordinances are satisfied. So the way that it's written right now is that you are exempted from, if you have a current B&B or Airbnb, and you do not, and you're legally in operation, you don't have the 2 parking spaces, you can keep it, but then you have to go through and satisfy all of the other requirements, which would be all of the other requirements that are set forth for licensing, local contact, interim placard requirements, prohibitions, etc. So that there is one exemption in the parking.
The light's not green, it's
Okay, so for clarity, then you're saying not just the Cherry House, but in any existing short-term rental that does not have off-street parking is exempted, but the ones going forward have to meet this. Is that my understanding?
Yes, sir. And just to clarify on the Terry House, it's now defined as an inn, and the inn is exempted from the ordinance.
So one other question, the current rental licenses, whether they're short-term or, are they good, they're only good for a year, right? So if this passed, somebody's still gonna have to get a new license in January, correct?
and comply with the law at that
Right,
point.
right,
So it's a
right.
1-year extension on whoever, that's how I read it.
Not even that. I mean, if it was passed in October, then then in 4 months, everybody's gonna have to apply for a new license.
That's reasonable.
Okay.
By the way, I bought the documentation that 31% of the homes in the historic district have off-street parking. If anyone is interested, I'd be happy to share that. I was surprised how many houses do.
That is surprising. Okay. What other comments, changes, recommendations do we have?
Excuse me, Madam Chair, just to clarify that last, statement, about, having to come in compliance by January, the end of the paragraph that Max was referring to says all short-term rentals and bed and breakfasts legally in operation and meeting all current code requirements as of the date of the introduction of this ordinance shall have 90 days to comply with the new regulations established herein.
Thank you, Chris.
So
Okay.
whether it's today, tomorrow, October,
Yeah, but,
they have 90 days to come into compliance, which would be getting the license and insurance.
right, but even if the thing got passed in November, they'd still have to get a new license in January, so I guess it just depends on when this gets approved.
They're all issued in January. Is there?
Okay, now can I go?
You've been waiting.
This is all good. So, on page 6E, prohibitions, item 4, no more than 2.5% of the total residential units in any zoning district. I think several people have talked about making that parcels instead of units, because so many parcels have multiple units on them. And the multiple units today is already creating a parking problem in the historic city. I'm not talking about the whole, outside the city, because everyone outside the city will be subject to this as well. But as I mentioned in our last meeting, East Third Street between Harmony and Chestnut has 2 or 3 apartment blocks in there, which don't have any off-street parking and have, all kinds of units in there. And it just adds to the number of units. And the objective of the 2.5% was to try to hold it down. We don't want every other house to be a short-term rental that would destroy the neighborhoods. So it was a legitimate effort to try to manage the number so that we didn't damage the neighborhoods.
But if you're doing unit, oh, you're thinking
A building with 6 apartments in it is 6 units on one parcel. You see what I'm saying?
I think in also response to Cynthia is, we have a definitive count on parcels and not a definitive count on
Right.
units in each
Exactly.
district. So we would not know if 2.5%, how many we're actually
Yeah.
saying should be in the unit, whereas if we do 2.5% on the parcels, we can say definitively, we know how many we're requesting to be allowed in each district.
So if you want to make that change, ask for motion. Change the word units to parcels in that section, and then you're good.
Do you want to say something, Tony?
No.
Did I make a motion?
No, I was counting how many units are builders,
There's a lot.
and there's a lot.
There's a lot. So I make a motion to change the word units in E prohibition section 4 to parcels.
I second that.
I got 2 seconds. Any more discussion on that? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Okay, motion's carried, so we will change units to parcels. So no more than 2.5% of the total residential parcel. Okay.
I had one other item, which is on page 7. Under 3, the following fines and penalties may be assessed. And then A, there's a very, very convoluted set of conditions under which a license would be revoked. We're talking about neighborhoods here, across the whole city. This is neighborhoods. If we get into a situation where we allow 6 violations, we're creating a staggering disruption of people's neighborhood life. I really think 6 is way, way too many. I would recommend you allow a 4 max. Sorry?
You
Maximum.
Max.
Maximum.
Oh, sorry,
Max.
max. Oh, I was like, max, you are the max, but that's not what I meant.
Can I make a clarification on that? I believe if I remember, Antonina,
when this came up, I think it was the violations are per day. So if they violate it one day, then the next day would be another violation if they didn't come into code with that. So, I mean, it's not like fixed overall, I mean, to fix this.
But the violation could be a noise violation, it could be, renters misbehaving, it could be renters not, abiding by parking regulations, it could be anything.
Letter B, I guess it's not.
Letter B, each day of violation.
If I can,
Yeah, but
You could
I
actually
think
do
it
have-
condenses it down to such a small time frame if they're doing it every single day that it would, they're gonna violate that in a very short period of time and then not be able to get their license again.
I'm not talking about that kind of violation. If people can't keep themselves together to effectively follow the law with their Airbnb short-term rental, then they should have their license revoked in any case. But the problem here is that the violations are gonna be ones where the cops are called, things like that. So, you know, do you want somebody living next to you who's bringing people into the house who violate the rules of big parties and keep doing it? And there's nothing you can do until they have 6 violations? You know, that makes for misery in a neighborhood. Our job here is to think holistically. What about the neighborhoods?
I still don't see an issue with it from a camera person.
if I can add something with regards to, that. For the 6 violations. Yes, it is.
Yes, it's like straight into, sold it down.
Well, I was saying with regards to the 6 violations here. There is not a time limit, it just says 6 violations. So you're saying this could occur over a period of 6 days or maybe 6 weeks or 6 months. I think there needs to be something that kind of specifies, that also gives a time limit for those 6 violations. Otherwise, it could just be a perpetuity.
It's within that, within the term of the rental license, so every year, I would assume it resets and they would get 6 more every year, every
2 years.
2 years.
I still think it's too many.
Right, so the mic's not working, so I have a question for the commission. How strict do you want to be? Do we want to be lenient? We have to ask ourselves that. Do you want to hold their feet to the fire? Or do you want to say, okay, you've got 5 more times? But after this year, you've got 6 more times. As you said, it's perpetual, it just keeps going. So we're either going to be very strict about it and say, we respect these communities, and this is how it's gonna be if you want to operate in said community. And I don't think that if you're strict or you're saying you have to adhere to rules, that you're not making it where they cannot practice their business. You're not being unfair to them. And once again, I'm gonna refer to, I have a very particular license. They are not lenient. You want that license, you follow the rules. We follow the rules. So are we going to say, this is it? Or we're just gonna say, okay, you've got this, this, and this, and I hope you understand the question that I'm asking.
It's like the liquor license. Yeah. Which was a really good example. I think for the entire city, we need to vote for our constituents who have to live next to these things. And endure problems, which they didn't ask for, which they didn't sign up for when they bought their properties. Okay, we're gonna allow a limited number of opportunities for people to do this, but I don't think we should give them opportunities to extend their lack of compliance because we're nice to them. This is not nice. This is about making sure that we preserve the quality of our neighborhoods.
Well, I think some of these violations also are, some could be very minor violations which don't interrupt the neighborhood and things like that. We don't know what the violations could or would be. So I think there's a certain amount of leniency that we can give to someone who maybe forgot to put a placard up, and we give them time to put a placard up. Maybe it takes them a couple of days to get it, so they're in violation for a couple of days.
Unfortunately, the world experience of short-term rentals argues against that position. The world experience, entire nations are outlawing these now. They're destroying historic communities around the world.
Okay.
They're getting outlawed everywhere. And, you know, as much as some people like to go to short-term rentals and spend time there and all that's great, problem is keeping people in compliance, particularly with obstreperous behavior, is extremely difficult. And if it's next to your house and it's 5 parties and you're waiting for number 6, you know, you won't be happy.
Well, I mean, I've had a group home next to me. I can't control who lives there, and I had police at my house almost every single day, ambulances. I can't control that. We're renters. So there are things already in the city that go against what you're saying that we have no control over. This we have some control over, and we're putting in some guidance in place. So if they are breaking a violation, they have some limitations to how long or how quickly they have to respond. And it's 3 or more violations, subsequent violations of the same offense, or a sum of 6 violations within the term itself. So I think that is fairly lenient and also restrictive.
I disagree.
So
Well,
we need to either make a motion and do some, change it or not.
I just wanted to clarify, so the permits or the licenses are good for 2 years, correct?
Correct.
So if we as a commission agree that it's 4 per licensing term, that's essentially 1 screw up a quarter or every, 6 months. That can be difficult to regulate, obviously when you have a third party, but it also puts the owners more accountable. I think that'll make a difference also if we move from 270 days to 180 days, because there's a lot less opportunity for that. I could go a bunch of different ways with this. I see both sides of it. The problem is gonna be is if you have someone who's not happy with this ordinance, they're gonna call on every little thing. Their trash can went out 20 minutes early, they're parked 13 inches off the curb. How many violations are we gonna rack up? The other side of it is, you get me as a neighbor, I'm a relatively nice guy. It's gonna take a lot for me to call the police. So at what point did that neighbor also look over and finally just say, I'm tired of this after the 3rd or 4th offense? I don't think it's gonna be loud parties or anything like that. We're just not conductive to that type of environment. I'm not saying it won't be, but
So the way it's written right now, there are 3 disorderly dwelling sort of complaints of the same offense. That would be, there would be 3, they would be out.
Max, in reference to, it says 3 or more, could we strike the or more and
Sure.
leave it at 3?
Sure.
Still need a motion.
No,
No, I'm just asking a question, because I think if you say, if there are 3 of the same offense, so if you have 3 loud parties within 2 years, sorry, you lose your license.
the other ones, and if you notice in there, any violation of the city code creates a violation. So if I had a plumbing or a building code violation, I gotta fix it within 6 days or I'm out. I lose my license.
This is
So
actually,
within 3 days, excuse me.
the 3 or more is actually 4 violations, just for clarity. Because the city can choose not to do a written warning instead of a fine if there are 3 subsequent violations. So that's actually 4 violations, it's not 3. Right?
Make a motion.
Okay, I make a motion to reduce the sum of the violations of more than one type, reduce it from 6 to 4.
Do I have a second? Do I have a second for that?
I second that. with a comment. We're doing something, putting something in place for something that we hope never happens, correct? And those people who have been here longer than I have, through your memory, I would even ask the officer, how often do you have to go to a short-term rental to engage a party that is being disrespectful to the neighborhood?
They're not allowed right now.
Or have you ever been called?
I personally haven't, I couldn't tell you what the overall agency has as well. I myself have personally gone to something. But then again, I'm also not asking either if it's true, like, you ask in terms of some, like, issue, it depends what the complaint may be, you know, varying degrees of the crime, or something like that, much more information gathered in terms of where they're going to be handling that.
You understand the reason?
So I understand why you understand.
Why I'm asking your question, so we're putting something in place, hoping that it never really becomes an issue. And then when we think about the behavior of people who are renting, whether it's the Cherry House, or if it's, God forbid, we mentioning it, Packet Alley, or the units on Delaware Street. My experience is that we put it in place, I second the work, because I don't think that we attract that type of customer base who wants to rent in this town. So for those who want to know why I second the board, that is why.
By the way, that 4 is actually 5, based on the way this ordinance is written.
So 3 was 4,
Yeah.
4 is 5.
If I can just make a comment, my only hangup with supporting this is, when we get into building code violations and things like that, and not so much in, you know, blatant building code violations, but, you know, you get into issues where some things take time to get repaired. You know, I live with this at work right now. You know, we had multiple HVAC units fail and we've been waiting 2 months for parts. That's the entire world that we live in across the spectrum, from vehicles to buildings to everything. So I don't know that it's necessarily fair to violate someone for something that's out of their control if they're trying to get it repaired, you know? But otherwise, in a violating the rules or the peace or whatever, I don't know if there's a way to differentiate that, Max, because it kind of gets into a gray area. Like I said, unless there's some caveat to say that, you know, like, hey, we can show you where we've had insert whatever trade out here to fix this problem. We can't get these parts, these materials, we can't get somebody out here, we've called everybody, like. It's unfortunately, like I said, it's just the world I live in. Personally, there's just, everything takes 7 to 10 days.
I have a question.
If I can make a comment.
Can you parse out? Is it too much to parse out?
Types of violations?
Right, okay, there's a speeding ticket. And then there's going 60 miles over the speed limit. Your thoughts?
The answer is yes.
Okay,
I can parse it out.
I think we should parse it out.
Okay, so with that,
Well, before we, I'd like to make another comment. I mean, I realize that this is, you know, been a charged topic we've had, as Margot alluded to. This has been part of our planning commission for the last 5 months. And I realize that, you know, this is a charged topic and charged, you know, topic of discussion. But there's also no such thing as an airtight, perfect ordinance. I mean, I think the ordinance has been discussed, it's been revised, it's been, I think this is what the second or third revision of this ordinance so far, so I don't think there's gonna be a perfect airtight ordinance that's gonna prevent anything and everything. I think you get the right one that is general enough and then allow room to apply it as necessary. So if we go back and make more amendments, and just go on to like yet another meeting discussing the same topic. And I think, you know, we have to come to something where we're gonna limit the number of licenses, we've discussed parking, we've discussed this. I think it's time we need to vote commission's time to other topics other than this and continue it on in perpetuity.
Talking about one thing here, and it's important, and I just looked over all the violations, and none of them are things you referred to.
So, no, that's incorrect. If you look at number 2, operational violations include failure, and then the 2H going on page 7, 2H, failure to comply with the building requirements in section D above. Section D are building requirements, short-term rental dwelling shall meet all applicable building, health, fire, and safety related codes at all times. So it does apply to building requirements. So I'm gonna try to answer the questions one at a time. I can parse it, right? You could tinker, and these are just suggestions, you could tinker with the number of violations, right? Like Commissioner Batty was talking about, and say it's 4, right? And then you could also, you could add a short line that said something to the effect of, the city has the discretion to extend the deadlines for violations of 2H above, which would be the building code stuff.
There might be amenable to that.
Yeah, guys, there. Yeah, I mean, that's a way to parse it. Yeah, I think that's pretty happy, agree with you. So the motion on the floor is to change it from 4, to change the word 6 to 4. And if that passes, then I have another one that I'm gonna propose to you along those same lines, but I think you ought to vote on whether or not to change it from 6 to 4.
6 to 4 with
Dependent on-
dependent upon
Yeah.
2H. So
Why don't we make just one motion?
So why don't,
So you need to amend your motion then.
no, just give me a second, withdraw the motion, withdraw the section, and I can.
Okay.
Are you withdrawing the motion?
I can withdraw the motion and then we'll go through it with all these things together.
So Commissioner Batty, if you're going to change 6 or 4, it would be my recommendation to change 3 to 2 in the line above.
I would be very pleased with that.
Okay, so
Yeah.
because otherwise it doesn't kind of make sense.
Yeah.
So change that to 2.
Okay.
Can we make it if there are 2 violations of the same offense, not 2 or more subsequent?
Yes. So if there are 2, and I'm gonna take out or more subsequent violations, if there are 2 violations of the same offense.
Yeah.
Okay, have that. So change the 2, remove the words or more subsequent. So that's sort of change 1, or change 2. Change 3 would state something, and I'm gonna write it up so it's on my paper, and then I'll say it to you, so to make sure I
Take your time.
Let's try this. The city has discretion to extend these deadlines for violations of section 2H above for good cause.
I accept that.
Okay, so somebody can so move me, I'm gonna read it all off. And then you can so move it.
Okay.
So in paragraph 2, or excuse me, paragraph 3,
A.
3A, if there are, we're gonna change 3 to 2. And we're gonna remove the words or more subsequent. We're gonna change the word 6 to 4. And then at the end of the paragraph, the following language will be added. The city has discretion to extend these deadlines for a violation of 2H above for good cause.
So moved.
Do I have a second now?
David Majewski, second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay. One abstention. Or is that a no? No. Okay. So this is passed. Okay, what else? Any other comment, any other proposed changes?
Can I just ask a question? Do we know how many short-term rental licenses are in the historic commercial district?
Well, not at the moment, but I think there
Are there?
Forest homes?
there's three.
There's at least one, Peckett Alley.
Oh,
Is that commercial?
Is it a short-term rental, or is it tourist?
It's a short-term rental.
Kristen, they
It's
don't know because they
It's a
don't
tour-
differentiate the license between a rental and short-term rentals. You can guess by looking on Airbnb. And there's not only Airbnbs in the historic district, but also outside, which is illegal today. But I mean, I asked this question before, I did a.
I don't think it's illegal, I think it's undefined. It's
It-
not, there's no law against it, it's just not defined a word.
Yeah, well,
We're
that's the point.
suggesting the parameters of it.
Yeah, that's a point. But I did ask before, and that's what, I mean, that's correct, right, Angelina, yeah. So, so after this, we will know, because we'll have a form.
So, no, my question is, since we don't know, is are you sending letters out to everybody who has rental and saying you need to differentiate, or how does that work?
Well, this still has to be approved by, recommended by you all, then it still has to go to council, which could take at least 9 months, so until a determination is made, it won't be scary anyone.
So if there's not any further changes. Oh, okay, go ahead.
Do I have any further changes at this point? Okay,
Just to confirm, we're staying at 270.
Nobody's made a motion to change
I'm
270.
fine with that.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm making the following motion to recommend ordinance 555 with the edits from tonight's meeting to the Newcastle City Council in response to the request for the Planning Commission to look into this issue, to change the definition of tourist home, further define short-term rental, bed and breakfast, and hotel, motel, and inn, and make corresponding code revisions as set forth in the proposed ordinance. Do I have a second?
Kristen seconds.
Do I have any discussion?
Could do a roll call vote.
Can I have a roll call vote?
Oh. Do I do that, or do you do that?
I can do it.
Thank you.
You need a microphone?
I'll speak really loud. Chairperson Margot Rain,
Approve.
Bree Rivera, Kristen Zumar,
Approved.
Cynthia Batty,
Approved.
Mark Anthony Williams, Stephen Franklin,
Approved.
David Majewski.
Approved.
Motion is approved, and we will forward this on to the city council. Thank you. Okay. What's next?
I do.
Okay,
Making a public announcement.
thank you. Okay, 3 minutes. Then we will, then we're gonna discuss the next ordinance. All right, the next order of business is a discussion of, ordinance 556 to amend the city of Newcastle municipal code. And Chris, I believe you have some comments for us?
Regarding that portion.
Yeah, if you could provide us with a definition of a home-based business for this ordinance?
Yes, a little long, but I'll read the whole thing. Under definitions, it's home occupation, and this was amended in 2004. Home occupation is defined as an occupation or profession which A, is customarily carried on in a dwelling or in a building or other structure accessory to a dwelling, and does not comprise more than 25% of the total floor area of all structures on the lot. B, is owned by a full-time resident of the dwelling unit and shall employ only other full-time residents of the dwelling unit. A home occupation which provides a service that occurs off-site may have additional employees, provided such employees meet and work off-site and are not at the subject residence. C, is clearly incidental and secondary to the use of the dwelling for residential purposes. D, must maintain the residential character and appearance of the structure. E, does not display goods, store or stock in trade, or sell commodities on the premises other than goods or products produced in the premises. F, does not involve visits by customers to the premises between 9 p.m. and 8 a.m. G, does not generate traffic volumes or increase traffic hazards than would typically be expected in a residential district. No goods or supplies shall be delivered by commercial vehicles either to or from the premises in connection with the home occupation, except by the United States Postal Service or a commercial delivery service. H, does not involve any machining, fabricating, automotive repair, maintenance, painting, or outdoor storage of parts or materials. And that's the end of the conditions. And number 2, in particular, a home occupation includes but is not limited to the following: A, art studio; B, dressmaking; C, professional office of a lawyer, engineer, architect, or certified public accountant within a dwelling occupied by the same. And 3, however, a home occupation shall not be interpreted to include the following: barbershops and beauty parlors, physicians or dentist offices, automotive repair or maintenance, and restaurants.
Would you repeat part E, section E for number 1?
Does not display goods, store, a stock in trade, does not display goods, comma, store a stock in trade, or sell commodities on the premises other than goods or products produced in the premises.
Do we know why the historic area was originally exempted from this?
That's a really good question. I have that same question.
So this is,
Because honestly, it doesn't make any sense to exempt it, if you ask me.
Oh, I think it makes all kinds of sense.
Oh, well, okay, so, because I would tell you, prior to the internet, Newcastle County had some pretty strict regulations about operating a business from your home. Since then, the world of employment and business has changed dramatically, and you have lots of people who have small businesses that they can operate from their homes. Graphic designers, people who work on, IT people can easily be working from home with their business but at the moment, they would be illegal if they were doing that.
I don't think so. I think what this thing says is where people visit you.
And that's what it's exempting. It's saying you can't do that, but right now, Max, am I correct? You cannot operate a business out of your home in the historic area, correct?
That's correct.
So,
So what's a business?
something you do for profit.
So, yeah, we just went through the definition of a home-based business. So if you fell under that category, any of those categories of the definition of home-based business, which is what brought this issue before you, and what Chris just read, if you fall under one of those definitions or under that definition, that's a home-based business.
So if the home-based business that we're discussing or talking about, if they're not actually charging for their service with their product, is it still a business?
That's the issue that's going to be decided if the ordinance doesn't change by the Board of Adjustment.
Well, there is another one that, I mean, it's disappointing again that we weren't told the real reason why this ordinance was created. And when I questioned the council member who put it forward, he told me it was because it was always this way in the past, which I found to be a very inadequate answer. Because if that was true, we should turn off all the electricity and invite a tannery to work in Dolby Alley. So that cannot be the reason. If the reason is to try to assuage a problem that should be solved by the Board of Adjustment, then this whole thing is wrong. We should just say, no, don't do it. But furthermore, the exemptions, barbershop, beauty parlor, physician or dentist's office, automotive repair or restaurants, sounds a lot like an environment where you invite a whole bunch of people into your house to do yoga together. I'm sorry to personalize it, but that is why this thing exists. And so even if this passed, it would exclude the yoga studio by definition.
I don't know that I agree with that
I disagree
interpretation.
with that.
I'm not going to fight with you here today.
Well, but she's taking some money somehow, right?
I'm not going to debate the definition, which is on appeal. I just don't read it that way.
I do, because all these other things are one person sitting in a room. However, I would make an argument that allowing people to put a shingle out for a law office, for example, is against the interests of the historic district. A law office typically has at least one admin.
Well,
right? City
but
solicitor.
again, it says, nobody who isn't already living in the home can work in this business. I mean, this is pretty consistent with what Newcastle County has. That you're not allowed to have any non-family members who are employees. So if you and your husband had a business, you could run it out of your home, but David couldn't come there and work for you, is the way this is written.
I understand that, but that's not the point I was making. The point I was making is that things that involve multiple people coming into the home are excluded.
Right.
Categorically excluded, and actually payment to do it is irrelevant. So, and the other thing that bothers me about all this is that if you're having a situation where you're gonna have people coming into your home, don't you need to pass fire code? Don't you need to have insurance? Well, I don't get it.
But tell me, if they're not charging for it, what is the difference between them doing it and having their friends come over and do it?
False premise. She's taking donations from people.
I don't think it's our place to debate the payments
Exactly. Thank you.
here. So I think that information needs to be excluded from what we consider
Agreed.
within this. I would assume that somebody who has a home crafting business, this would apply to. Somebody who paints and sells their artwork, it would apply to. You could not obviously have a studio where you show your paintings and multiple people come in.
But you have one or two.
But I mean, as a dressmaker, you would go, your client would come to your house to get fitted for the dress. I've gone to dressmakers for my own wedding dress and everything. And I've gone to their house where I was fitted multiple times. So there is obviously some sort of minor possible traffic that way, in that regards.
I would like to point out also that these are not permitted in the R1 zone either. So it's not just the historic residential district that the home occupation is currently not allowed. So this is only allowed in currently the R2 and R3.
So part of this is to make it consistent with the rest of the city, correct?
It would only make it consistent, with home occupation provisions in the R2 and the R3 district as stated in the ordinance.
So I have a question with regards to this ordinance. When was this ordinance originally written or drafted?
December 14th, 2004, ordinance 429.
Okay, 2004. Okay, so I'm just curious as to how these types of occupations were identified as being examples.
Yeah, I would say that it's the legislative sausage making process. That, much like we've just gone through an exercise, I'm sure they went through the same sort of exercise at that time.
Can you differentiate R1 versus R2 and R3? And why that's not being included in this?
The reason the R1, that was not the request that we got.
But what's the differentiation between R1, R2, and R3?
Uses, lot sizes, setbacks, special exceptions. R1 is the least dense zoning district, least dense residential district. Probably doesn't allow attached dwellings. So R1 is typically the least intensive, R2 a little bit more, R3 typically, not typically, but in our case, multifamily. Let me find.
My question would be why not include R1 in this as well?
That's,
If you're gonna go residential, it shouldn't just be,
It's your prerogative as the commission to make a recommendation.
I think it should apply to all residential districts, not just one. Or two. Or three.
Other discussion?
So that would include a basic crafting business?
You heard the definition. If it falls underneath that definition, yes.
And what about somebody who works from home for a company?
So all sort of fuzzy when you get to one person who sits behind a computer, to be fair.
So my question is, I guess seemingly this is a single point issue. Is this something that should definitely have followed the track it was on and stayed in front of the Board of Adjustment? Is this something that we need? I don't disagree with the letter to the written public comment letter and the discussion we've had, and maybe some of these trades are outdated and they need to be updated, but is this something that we necessarily, we just went through 7 months of short-term rental discussions and agreements and disagreements. Do we need to drag this out for 7 months?
So,
I'm not saying that it
no,
should,
no, no.
but the Board of Adjustment would give us a precedent to follow.
To apples and oranges.
Yeah.
Apples and oranges.
And that's what I'm asking, I don't know.
Yeah, apples and oranges, or apples and pears, whatever you're thinking. This ordinance was introduced by council in normal course. I mean, somebody from council had to put their name on it. It comes to you. You ask for a recommendation on the ordinance. The appropriate interpretation of the home occupation, that's the Board of Adjustments, whether or not you're paying money, all that, that's what they would decide. If this were to pass, it would likely move to that, and I don't want to say absolutely, but likely move that Board of Adjustment proceeding. I don't know that for certain, but likely. So the question before you all is, do you want to recommend sort of home-based business in the historic district? I think because of the way the ordinance is done and the way it's coming before you, somebody said, well, let's make it for all residential districts, right? And then your recommendation could be, yes, let's make it for all residential districts. You could put that in your motion if you wanted to do that.
I continue to be astonished at the apparent disregard for the importance of the historic district in our city. I recently wrote an article about how we came to be a preserved city. In the historic area, it is a national park. It's preserved entirely by individual homeowners who pay and follow the rules to keep that particular part of the city an historic area. It is an ornament to the nation, a picture of democracy. And we keep seeing things coming into the Planning Commission, which seem to disregard the sanctity of that space. There's been no polling of the city of how people feel about this. This would change the other R1 zones who haven't been asked if they want this or don't. I think it's arrogant. It was clearly done to solve one problem, which I agree with my fellow commissioner belongs in front of the Board of Adjustment, and that this is way too big to do without thoughtful consideration. But especially, we live in an incredibly important area for our nation and for historic preservation. And I just feel like there's one degrading little slap every couple of months, and I don't get it. And somebody needs to stand up and say no. And I say no.
Well, I think going along that line, this is gonna kind of trail off, but historically, people ran businesses out of their homes. I mean, my great grandfather ran a shoe repair business out of his home. So
I understand that argument. So let's turn off electricity because they didn't have electricity. Let's get horses to run down the streets and poop in the streets, and let's bring in indentured servants and others to do our work for us. Let's do everything like we did it before.
Okay,
right?
that's fine. Just a clarification, Max. Technically, this would, if this isn't changed, then someone could not be legally working from home if they live in the historic district.
As I said, it's a little fuzzy.
It's correct.
Right, it's correct, and it depends on the intensity of what they're doing, right? So if you're sitting in your little office and you're working on, I don't know, something, right? And then everything is a step, right? So the more people you have in, the more stuff. We would look at the code. We would make a call if we got a complaint on that issue, and we would say yes or no, and then people could, that's why we have an appeals process. You could take it to the Board of Adjustment on that call, because it is a little bit fuzzy. But I don't want to say categorically that, if I'm in my house writing a brief for 2 days, and I live in Newcastle, and I'm not allowed to do that, right? But I'm conducting a business and making money for doing that. But there's gradations that go along with that, and the more you sort of go towards business use, yes, it could be deemed an illegal home-based business, which is the issue that brought this to light.
That's not true. The issue that brought this up is somebody operating a business which the city determined was against code. That's what brought this up.
That's just what I said.
But this is a one situation instance, and you're recommending.
I'm not
that
recommending
that we
anything.
have a ticket with somebody.
I'm not recommending anything. This came from council, it didn't come from me.
I understand. I
So,
communicated with
so
the
you
council
could,
member
okay, that's fine.
who told me it was because it was the way it was always done, which it wasn't.
Well, look, I don't know what you were told,
I can show
but
you
it comes
the
from
text.
council. I don't care. It came from council. We have a process, right? There's a process by which the council can recommend to you. You guys can say, I love it, I hate it, I recommend it, I do whatever. Then it goes back up to council.
So, putting aside the perception that this is a one-issue situation, should we be considering whether home-based businesses should be allowed in the historic district?
No.
I think it depends on how that's encompassed. If you work from home and somebody doesn't like you, and they know you work from home and they say you cannot have a home business, then they're gonna report you. So we need a clear definition of, does working from home, contract pay, this, and the other. If that is a home-based business, even if you work for another company, does that apply? Because since COVID, many people work from home. And I think that's just my big hangup is that's it.
Well, but
Something else, I can make a comment.
go ahead.
Something else, I mean, I realize that ordinances often have circular language. And as I'm reading this, and I read this like 3 times before I spoke up. As I'm reading this, 1, 2, 3, 4, under the 4th whereas. It says, whereas the city council finds that as in the case in the R2, R3 zoning districts, home occupations should also be permitted accessory uses in the HR historic residence zoning district, subject to standards enumerated in city code, section 230-1 definitions, da, 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 da. So I guess what I'm getting at is where, yes, this probably should be going through the Board of Adjustments first before it comes to us, if it wants us.
No.
Let me finish.
Okay.
But it's stating here that home occupations should be permitted accessory use in the HR historic residence district. So what are we talking about?
If you look at map 4. And this big packet,
I'm looking at map 4.
it breaks down historic residential, R1, R2, R3.
Right. But I read that and I was looking at this as well before I even spoke. What I'm saying is that it says home occupations should also be permitted accessory use in the HR common historical residence zoning districts. So it says it. So I'm a little bit unclear as to what that means.
But let me say, yeah, that's the proposal. And you guys are saying you should adopt that proposal or not adopt that proposal. You guys can find that it shouldn't be permitted as an accessory use, or if you voted against the proposed or recommended against.
So I do have a question. We're saying that the items outlined, that we said were not acceptable are allowed in the R2 and R3 currently?
Yeah, remember when Chris read that? Yep, all of that was permitted.
But not the R1 and the HR.
That's correct.
So now, and this is kind of what is confusing, I guess, what I began, we're saying that we're essentially looking and saying that the areas that have the smallest potential footprints of homes, the most congestion, the most compacted areas, probably some of the less square footage, we're going to allow people to potentially run home businesses out of, but not in the R1 areas where I have a larger home, I have a full basement, I can have a second floor, that part of that is dedicated to a home business. Understand what I'm saying?
It's currently written, yes, it's currently written, the answer to your question is yes. There was a notion that this should be maybe expanded to the R1, maybe that's your recommendation. When you take a vote, or you could say it shouldn't be expanded at all. But it's all a recommendation, right?
That's what we can do.
The problem is how many people are involved and at what point do you have to have fire regulation and insurance and other things like that?
So to understand the commentary, are we concerned that if you allow this to happen in the historic district, that it's going to change the makeup of said district? Is that what the biggest concern is?
Absolutely.
And why do we think that that would happen? Given the nature of the homes that are there, we know that Joe can't open up a fix your brake business on 3rd Street. Like you ride down Route 9 by Super G and there's a guy out there, he fixes people's brakes. We know that's not gonna happen. So my question is, aren't there enough rules in place to ensure that people are not going to open a business that shouldn't be there? It takes a lot to open a business. I'm sure that there's quite a few people already working from home. out of necessity. Technically, I work from home if I'm writing notes for the restaurant. But I get it, we're concerned about the historical makeup of the town, we don't want the complexion of that to change. No, I don't think we should bring horses into town and return everything to like it was. I mean, at one time, what the Strand was a thriving business district, but now it's residential. So I'm just trying to understand what, are we voting yay or nay because we're concerned about what's gonna happen to the homes that are on Fourth, Fifth, Second, Third, the Strand, Hackett Alley? Are we overreacting?
You
That's
make
what
a
I'm
good
asking.
point. The definitions are not clear enough for us to make a determination. That I think is very clear. Okay, so maybe we need to send everybody back to the drawing table and say, if you wanna do this, you gotta fix the definitions. And do it with input from the communities who are being affected, because this looks like a fast one to me. Let's just do this. No. We need to have the citizens of this city involved in this, and I have noticed that when we do stuff like this, we seldom ask anybody outside the historic district, so maybe we give them a chance. Do a poll.
The process is, as set forth by code, that there is a public hearing here for every resident to attend. And which we had this evening with a public notice, gets published, and there's a second public hearing before the council. That's the process.
I know all that, and I also know how well that actually works. I'm an expert on governance. That is my subject matter area of expertise.
Okay,
I know all
so
of
then
that.
you know that there's not a requirement to poll the residents.
No, there's no requirement,
Okay,
but
thank you.
but enlightened leaders take better care of their communities than do things quickly and push them through. Would you agree with that?
There's a
Cynthia-
legislative process that it goes through. I'm here to ensure that the legislative process goes. I will leave political considerations to those who practice politics.
I went to the meeting the other day on the data center, which was really good. It was
We're not here to talk
public
about the
science.
data center.
I'm talking about a different problem. If we
Right.
really want to communicate what we're planning to do to people effectively, then I think you get a lot bigger turnout here.
Is the agenda posted in the weekly? And the agenda is posted on the website?
So
Okay, go on.
I was talking,
This information was posted in regards to parking tickets, and I still got a parking ticket and I paid it because I was wrong. I didn't read about the parking tickets for street sweeping. It's my job as a citizen to be informed. And if you live in a historic district, these things affect you, you should be at least reading what the topics are at the council meeting and other meetings, so that you may give your input. You can't say we should poll people because they don't read these things that affect them. So I don't think that that's an accurate, if it's publicized in the weekly, it's
not
put
everybody
on.
gets the weekly. In fact, I learned the
But
other
it
day.
doesn't matter what you have against the weekly, if it's publicized in the
I like the
weekly,
weekly.
and if it is put on the city website, you have informed citizens. Whether they go there for the information or not is not your responsibility or my responsibility.
Okay, can we?
So I don't think that polling people is the answer. People need to show up if they don't like the way things are.
Okay, I wanna limit the discussion, to this ordinance. And there's different perceptions on what's going on here. My initial perception was we're trying to bring the code up to match what kind of businesses we have in 2025. And a lot of people have home-based businesses because they're working as contractors, subcontractors, and they may just be sitting in their home on their computer. But the reality of today is we don't have the same kind of businesses we had 20 years ago or 30 years ago. So I think when we're looking at this legislation, we need to be not thinking about one business, but anybody who wants to operate some kind of home-based business, even if they're sitting in their office on their computers, because we've got gray areas, so we either need to change the definitions or just be cognizant of that this encompasses a lot.
Well, I'm all for changing the definitions, and let's spend some time and do that properly instead of rush this through with definitions that frankly don't really mean anything.
I would just like to say that the definition that Chris read, I felt like once he broke it down, the actual definition and the restraints on it, I felt like it was fairly comprehensive to the point where it would solve the need of this ordinance. Now, the descriptions that they list maybe are a little outdated, but they're just examples and not all inclusive, and the definition did say that specifically. So I don't want us to get hung up on the actual occupations listed because those are not all inclusive. As long as the other terms are met based on the definition, I think that it was fair enough that the way that it was written would work for us.
I think that the definition of home occupation shall not be interpreted to include the following, because I did go back and read the code. Beauty parlors, dentist's office, automotive, restaurants. That's where groups of people get together inside your house. If the objective here is to pave the way for the yoga studio, with respect to Tennessee, who I like very much, has nothing to do with her. If that's the definition, that would exclude that kind of an operation. So if you want to include it as something that you're allowed to do, what do you do then? Say you can't have more than 4 people, you can't have more than 20 people, you can't have more than 50 people? Where do you set the guidelines?
But
We're solving a problem for one situation that ought to go to the Board of Adjustment, and if they want to look at this more carefully, let's do a proper job.
But I think there's more than just the number of people coming in those places that you identified. In a restaurant, you have lots of health code regulations. In a barber shop, there are health code regulations. And those things, I think, impact your ability to have them from home.
It
Technically,
doesn't say that at all.
but you said the ones that are not allowed are a barber shop, a restaurant, blah, blah,
I
blah.
said they have many people coming into the building.
Is
That's
that what the
difference.
code says?
That is the commonality between all of
That
them.
isn't the commonality. I would say the commonality is health code regulations.
And fire, and insurance, and volume of people, and potential automobiles, and all kinds of other things. This is rushing it through. We shouldn't do this.
So the process would be, there'd be 3 ways to go about this. The first, well, 2 ways to go about it. The first would be to vote to either approve or to recommend or not recommend the ordinance as written, which is what I recommend you do. The second thing you could do is you could table it to the next meeting, or pass it to the next meeting for the purpose of reviewing the definition, or further review of the definitions, and for further discussions of the term home-based business as defined in the code. So you could have a motion on the ordinance to recommend or not, or you could move it to the next meeting and have further discussion.
I would do the second.
Okay.
Somebody got to make a motion to do something.
I make a motion to defer this discussion until the next meeting, when we can have a little bit more information and ideas, perhaps do some research on how other jurisdictions have solved this problem, so that we actually solve a problem that's beneficial for the city and do it in a thoughtful way.
Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, so then we would have any further discussion. I think we'd beat it to death, and there would be a roll call vote. And that would be to defer it to the next meeting. So yes means defer, a no means no defer, not to defer.
Margot Rain,
Yes.
Bree Rivera. Kristen Zumar,
Yes.
Cynthia Batty,
Yes.
Mark Anthony Williams, Stephen Franklin, David Majewski,
Yes.
5 yes and 2 abstentions.
Motion passes. Can I get a little help here for what you want to do for the next time? Because you know, I tell that I love this group writing process that we engage in, but, so what thought I would do, and I'll give you guys some homework. So if we're talking about the definition of home-based business, I'm gonna bring in, and we're gonna put it up on the screen, and if I could have you guys sort of have any tweaks to that you would like prepared ahead of time. I think, well, no, I don't have any guidance at this point in time. So what we'll put a Word version up on the screen, on the big screen here, right? And then we'll get my friends who are better at technology than I am. And if you guys could have whatever tweaks to that you would like to have, then we can put that in at that time. And I'd like you to also be prepared to discuss whether or not you wanted. So we're going to deal with the definition of home-based business. And we're also going to discuss R1 or R1 and the historic district. You can have your thoughts together about that. Is that what you're looking at? I'll do what you want. That's what.
Can we see it a week before the?
I'm not making a draft. I'm just putting what we got up on the screen next time.
So you're putting it up on the screen.
Not that, the definition from the code.
We have a copy of that.
Yeah, well, I'll get a copy. Yeah, well,
It's online, but.
it's on,
Okay.
so, and I'm just gonna put that up there next time, and then we can sort of work our way through it.
In the meantime, could you provide some other more recent home-based business descriptions from other jurisdictions that we can look at?
Yeah, that's easy.
Okay, but I mean, it's easier for you than us.
Yeah.
You know, the LexisNexis or whatever, and just send them to us so that we can look at them and see how others have solved it.
Sure, Rod.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay.
May I ask you a question now?
Sure.
In regards to one of the comments that was brought up at the original reading of this. One of the comments that was read from Kara Hayward regarding signage coverage and the aesthetics of the buildings. Does that not automatically have to go through HAC either way?
Yeah, it would all go through.
So that really is not that's irrelevant, that
there are rules for signage in city code and that follow through in the design guidelines. But the issue here is you can't unreasonably withhold approval to put a sign out if they're allowed to put a sign out, you see what I'm saying? And that is probably inimical to the interest of the historic district. So.
Okay, we need to move on to the next.
Chair, may I be excused, because I don't know that'll help you with what's rest.
Are you done? You're
What?
done for the evening?
If I'm excused, yes, ma'am.
I think you could be excused.
Thank you very much.
Oh, stop.
Okay, the next section that we're gonna discuss is the chapters that were assigned to look at for this meeting. So we've got chapter 4, 5, and 6. And Chris, did you want to make any comments before we start diving into this?
Can we just get an overview of what we're supposed to have done by reading this, because I don't.
So just like we did with the previous chapters several months ago, you were asked to read this over. We're looking at 3 things. Is there anything that probably should be updated? Is there anything that needs to be addressed immediately? Or can what you've identified is something that needs to be addressed in the complete revision or not, the next, the 10-year plan, the next time in 2030. So that's what you were looking at for these chapters, just like in the other chapters.
And just to provide the statutory background, the law says at least every 5 years, a municipality shall review its adopted comprehensive plan to determine if its provisions are still relevant given changing conditions in the municipality or in the surrounding areas. State law doesn't give you a lot of guidance, so. Regarding the 5-year review.
I do want to make you aware that as I was reading this, what I came to recognize is that when this one was created, it looks like they started the process 2 years before it was to be completed. I'm expecting we're gonna do the same thing. I have also asked the city to begin accruing some money in the budget so that we have the money to pay for the third party to help us write this when we get there. So that was done, so. So what comments do people have? I don't think I want to go page by page, but let's just, what kind of thoughts for chapter 4?
I have one, which is, there was a tremendous amount of hopeful energy placed on the development of the gateway, which has come to naught.
So what page are you on?
It's on page 37.
At the bottom.
Yeah, and it's, Gateway is threaded through a lot of this. And it's a very important area as the gateway to the national park. Excuse me. And you know, again, I feel warmly towards the businesses that are there, but it is an eyesore. And it has not improved after all of this thoughtful energy. So is there something we could do to put a bigger focus on making the gateway better? Now, I do know that the plans to reroute the roads and fix them will slightly fix it up. But there's basically derelict houses sitting there. There's you know, the sign on the River Plaza parking or shopping center is so faded you can barely read it. There just isn't a sense of pride or beauty or investment in that area. And that was a big deal here. The gateway, let's fix up the gateway. Nothing has happened. So what could we do with this to put more focus on getting something to happen on the gateway?
Well, I guess at the moment, the real question is that something we can realistically change right now? Or is that something for the discussion from when we do the 10-year
plan? Well, let's put it in the notes for the 10-year plan then. Because it's very important for the whole city, you know?
Well, hopefully, over the next 5 years, by bringing it up now.
Yeah.
Somebody can say, hey, maybe there's
We should do
funding
something.
or something available that we can.
Well, I do know Rick Farrell, who helps with that Gateway funding program, wants to do a workshop here, so making sure that people are aware of that, that there's money there to help with that redevelopment.
That would be great.
You're talking about the downtown development district.
Does this fit in with that downtown development district?
My understanding is not downtown development.
Downtown gateway.
It's the gateway is outside of
It's
the
not
downtown
part of that?
development.
Cause I thought it was. Cause I thought that apartment building that's being built across from Walgreens would.
It is the DG, I don't know the exact boundaries of the DG off the top of my head. The DDD. I do not think it includes Ferry Cutoff. It includes more the other gateway, the West 7th Street.
I think
Can we
the
get to that?
DDD fills in where the DG does not.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but there's not that specific program that allows for reimbursement for folks. If it's not applicable to the downtown development or gateway area, should we make it? We think about including the gateway in the designated area.
Chris, there's only so much we
Yeah,
can do with
The
that.
DDD has limitations on acreage,
I-
contiguity,
Right.
and coincidentally, when the city first applied for the DDD designation, we gerrymandered, if you will, the DDD, the proposed DD boundaries to go out and get the two gateway districts. It had like two wings on it, and that was denied by the state because it wasn't compact. It wasn't meeting the intent of the DDD program, where it was intended to be, a compact, contiguous area. So we tried to include the DG zones in the DDD. We had to go back to the drawing board and came up with what we have now. And then when the law was changed or the program was changed to allow a little bit more acreage, we went south and terminated at the Battery parcel. So that's the southern terminus of the DDD area, and it does not include ferry cutoff. So that's sort of we don't have any control. The comp plan doesn't have any control over the state's DDD criteria. As far as amending the comp plan to do more in the DG areas, I mean, the comp plan just sort of sets the table for a variety of zoning tools that can be put in place. So I'm not, maybe there's more that can be done during the rewrite, but I certainly don't think the comp plan would need to be revised now to include something, because whatever would be done would be through funding, would be through trying to get grants, trying to get DelDOT to do something, or changing the zoning ordinance to allow for a variety or some different bulk density or less intense uses or more intense uses, less restrictions, more restrictions. And the comp plan language as it exists today would allow for that wide variety of land use tools to spruce up the area.
Just in regards on page 41, the downtown gateway district, it talks about pedestrian oriented neighborhood commercial districts. Is there any funding or like pedestrian safety or anything that we could possibly get into that would allow us to maybe make it nicer?
The road redo will help with that. The DelDOT
So, sorry, I'm just coming back in. I don't know what the original conversation was about, but regarding pedestrian safety, we are doing a WILMAPCO pedestrian walkability study next week. So I encourage you to join that. And that'll be in the historic area. And then later this year, we'll have another one in another part of town. But once you do those kinds of studies, they prioritize the issues amongst the state. And then you can apply for funding such as the Transportation Alternatives grant, Safe Routes to School. There's different types of things that will help with pedestrian safety. So yes, there's a lot of funding available, but depends on how many people apply, how many municipalities, and what's available.
Is that federal funding?
It's some of it is federal that's routed through the state.
So depending on whether federal funding's still there.
Right.
Other comments on chapter 4? Okay, so we will definitely put rethinking how to improve the gateway district for the 10-year plan. Okay. Thank you.
Annotation.
Actually, I have a question. One of the goals was has to do with, update land development, update the land, goal 4-6. Update land development application process, including fees to cover professional reviews, blah, blah, blah. Do we know if that got done? It's on page 48.
I don't know that that was done, but we did include in the budget this year, a study, to review our fees.
Okay.
So that would encompass that.
I was just curious as I was reading through. Other comments on?
Yes, I have. On page 28, strategy S4-2. When you look at the map, we refer to it as downtown gateway. It actually encompasses far more than just Ferry Cutter Road, which we were just discussing. It also includes 7th Street on River Road. And I think the point that's being made here with the strategy, I have to agree with that, that the same level of design quality doesn't exist for the city as a whole, as more focus is focused on the historic district. So when we do discuss this or think forward, I think we need to be aware of that.
Although I, as I campaigned, I walked around many of the neighborhoods and I was really impressed how nice a lot of them, you know. So, I mean, I'm interested in how to make them better, you know, I would almost be more interested in looking at commercial properties than homeowner properties, because I think people here take good care of their homes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really.
I don't think there's so much about how nice things look. I think it's just the fact of the matter is that a lot of the attention tends to be focused either intentionally or unintentionally on the historic district at the deficit for the rest of the city. And we need to include the entire city in the process.
I agree, because people don't even know that where I live is within the district, within the city. They just assume that I'm not because.
She's not downtown?
historic, yeah, I'm not downtown.
Yeah, well, that's part of building the city.
Okay, anything else on chapter 4?
Just a quick comment. I take the commissioner's point but also, the DG zone did incorporate a lot of design standards. I know it's not the entire city. I don't think it fulfills that entire strategy. But
They're in the city code.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. The DG zone does incorporate, historic type design standards, to try to, mimic the extension of the historic district out to the gateways.
Chapter 5. Any comments on annexation other than, we know, so on page 50, kind of that third paragraph, there was the idea of developing guidelines for future annexation decisions. You know if that happened?
No, it has, my knowledge, it hasn't happened. It happens, it hasn't happened in my tenure here at the city, the request for annexations. So it's not, we're not being bombarded by annexations where we have to come up with criteria. Or the city must have has decided that to date.
The purpose of annexation would be to increase the tax base, right?
Be one of the
Yes.
purposes.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of residential areas out, towards Langolan and stuff, which are in the county and have our same zip code, but are not part of our city.
Correct.
So, what if we decided to annex them, grow our city size? That's a strategic idea. I mean, I was surprised to find out they weren't part of our city.
There's actually a lot of breaks within our city because those communities chose not to. So I think that may have been the case, for instance,
It's just not. I know all the rights. When I was campaigning, that was totally weird. Well, another factor on that.
Rogers Manor, they, years and years,
They said
when I
no.
was little, they said no.
Okay,
They did. So I mean, it depends on if the community wants to be annexed as well.
Well, the only comment I'd make here, and it ties into the next chapter of infrastructure, is if anybody here did go to the data center meeting, in which there was virtually no information except for the sudden awareness that one of the biggest data centers on the planet is proposed to be built between us and Delaware City. There were huge questions about ordinances about supplying adequate power, about failovers in the event of power failures, employment, all kinds of other things. I believe that that property is in Delaware City technically now, or in a county area between us. And it's gonna generate a ton of money, a ton of tax money. What if we annex that? And got that money for ourselves, you know, I mean, maybe it's too late, but, you know, that kind, we were talking earlier about the way things are changing. Data centers and warehouses are the future.
I don't think the city would wanna take on that infrastructure. I don't think we're big enough to take off that kind of infrastructure.
I think Anthony is up to it, don't you?
Sure. I will just say one thing, like, to Kristen's point, annexation is mutually, it has to be a mutual agreement. So
Okay.
not only do we have to show interest, of course, but the property owner would as well. So they would want to come into the city to receive benefits of being here, to receive benefits for a police department or public works, things like that. And it has to be agreed upon by both, or else it's you know.
Well, the path of least resistance is to do nothing, but if we wanna set strategy, I don't think anybody's given this a thought since this paper was published, so do we wanna think about that? It is part of our role, I think, to help set strategy here.
I guess the real question is, does the city want more property to annex, or do they not?
I think because it's in the comprehensive plan, I think.
But that was, what, 7 years ago that they started this one, so.
Well, and I think it's something though, we don't need to change for the 5 years.
No, but
It's something to
the
discuss in
10
the
year,
10 year.
you know, we probably need city council to also weigh in on what.
Well, they have to approve it, yeah.
Yeah, but to weigh in on what
Before
should be a strategy or.
Strategy is conversation, it's not a, so, you know, we need to just say, you know, are we interested in this as a city or not?
Because if we're not interested, we should just remove the strategies.
Well, you would notice that there were a number of public meetings and hearings prior to this revision. I would assume we will do the same thing. And, you know, Fran, this is 3 years out before we start this. I would think we're gonna identify, we're gonna have X number of meetings, and these are gonna be the topics at those meetings, and hopefully we'll be able to get the city council to also weigh in on a lot of this stuff. I don't know how that works though.
Well, and I was gonna speak to Commissioner Maddie's points earlier about the ordinance process, which I don't necessarily agree with, but to your point, a comprehensive planning process is a much more proactive planning process that you can, you know, send out surveys, you can send out mailers, and that's typically what's done in a robust comprehensive planning process. You have workshops where you say, workshop number 1, this room's gonna be open for 2 or 3 hours, and it's an open house, and every hour, someone's gonna talk, say the same thing to people that are here, and there'll be boards set up for people to, you know, do a SWOT analysis, or what is your major concern about the city? So it's a much more open, proactive solicitation process as opposed to the, you know, really prescriptive legislative process.
And if we wanted to woo other parts of the city who may have said no last time, but might wanna say yes this time, you know, that brings in more money for fire, for police, for infrastructure.
But it means more people that we have to deal with.
Oh, I understand that. I mean, growth involves growing. It's hard that way, but it can bring benefits, especially if we got areas that we could offer for development that produced higher tax revenue than houses. We already have a crisis here.
I have a question. In addition to, you know, I agree, trying to find ways to increase the tax base is crucial. But I do have a question with regards to chapter 5. Looking at map number 5. And the third paragraph talks about one of the key goals, this is back in 2003, was to annex the remaining pockets or islands of unincorporated land within the city boundary in an effort to create a ultimate city boundary. And when you look at the map on page 5, you see the pockets are referring to 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now, I've only been a resident here since 2019, so maybe this predates me, but what is it, why is it that these pockets have not been incorporated? That was the stated goal back in 2003. What is it about those 5 little areas?
I don't know the answer to that.
I could just share from experience, like this is not a unique problem to Newcastle. I don't wanna say it's a Delaware thing, but it's probably a Delaware thing. When these cities were created, they were just chopped up. And like I said before, it has to be mutually agreeable. So if the property owner is not interested in annexing, that could be a reason. If there wasn't a large push for that annexation, that could be another reason. There's many different possibilities of why.
I mean, looking at the map here, I can approximate where these areas are. I think like 3 and 4. I know there's one of them I think is a well, but actually that's part of the MSC, so that would be that. I know there's that apartment complex right there, you turn on to 141. And as you go down on Frenchtown Road, there's that area that's, as you get across from the farmer's, that's the farmer's stand, number 1? Okay.
No, it's across from.
Okay, it's across from the farmer's stand where the 2 houses are, okay. Okay, never mind.
Yeah,
I was thinking they was probably
Where that fence
where
would
the,
be? What's this big hole? North, I guess.
That
Three
is
and four.
designated, yeah.
That just looks like a big hole. It's just marked, so nobody owns it.
2?
People
No,
own
there's
it.
nothing in there.
In there.
It just
Yeah,
looks
but
like a
it's
big hole.
just above 3 and
there's no number to
Mark.
it.
It's a mark.
Yeah.
So nobody is responsible for that?
No, there's property owners.
Somebody owns it.
But it's not within the city, or it is within, I mean, it's a big circle, I don't, it's weird.
This is what we're talking about. This area, right?
I mean, it's that, I don't understand why it's singled out as not.
Part of the city.
Maybe it's not desirable, it might be a Superfund site, nobody wants it.
Don't know, those enclaves are, there's a variety of reasons. And to Antonina's point, in my experience, there's like generally 2 types of annexation: a developer requested annexation, where they're requesting to be annexed into a town or municipality because they want something. They want your water, they want your sewer, they want your zoning, and you work out a deal. The other is a proactive annexation from the municipality, and then that's where you have to be offering, as a city, the residents or a business, why is it beneficial for them to come into the city of Newcastle? And you kind of have to sometimes provide some incentives for them to come into the city, so.
And the hard part is that,
We don't have Delmarva electricity, that's a good incentive.
yeah, and the hard part is too, with some of these areas, I mean, they're already receiving Newcastle City Police Service and, fire service from Goodwill, so other than paying city taxes and maybe getting their trash picked up, not that much more you have to offer them from like a infrastructure. Today, correct, well, yeah, but
The Goodwill takes care of it anyway, right?
yeah, regardless, yeah.
Yeah, so.
And same with, I think, with Newcastle City Police.
Anything else for chapter 5 or chapter 6?
That was fine. That was fine.
That was fine. Anything else for 5? And any comments on chapter 6?
I would just bring up the data center again. The demand for electricity is becoming insane. And I don't know, I don't think we generate electricity here. I could be wrong. I think we're just consumers. I don't know if there's any opportunity for our city to think of playing differently in that area. Because anybody who could generate electricity can sell it today. So, I don't know
What would it cost to be able to do that, I guess?
Well, I'm not an engineer and I don't know, but I'm just saying that there is a potential there. If there's some way for us to generate electricity in some way, whatever that might be. Maybe it involves an investment, but there's money to be made in providing electricity. So maybe we challenge the MSC to put their thinking cap on and see if there's something. I mean, we have waterways here, we have the river right outside, we've got wind power here, we've got all kinds of other things. When that data center is built in about 2 years, it will be gold to be able to provide electricity to it.
My concern is it's gonna drain electricity.
That's everybody's concern.
Yep.
And they're talking blather about, buying it off the national grid. I'm like, really? They're bringing 3 Mile Island back on. So it's just, it's strategic thinking on this. Is there something we have or something we could do that would put us in a different position? And of course, we don't know that, but MSC people are all engineers, they know. They can think of something, maybe. Just a thought.
Any other comments? Okay.
Otherwise, MSC is excellent. I just want to say they are excellent.
We're finally at the public comment section. One public comment, 3, 2.
Good evening, all. I guess first starting with, I've seen most everything. I've been a member of the community for 12 years now and have literally attended 85 to 90% of the meetings, not just council, but all across the board. So what I'm going to say is reasonably educated, not just out there, some Phil Gross picked up out of the air. First, we getting to the issue of notifying the community. Cynthia Batty is correct. I've been after council, and one of the important ways is reverse notification. People, members of the community can opt in to get messages. The weekly is useless when it comes to notifying because you have to subscribe. I think 70% of the community doesn't subscribe, so that's out. I've requested that the city, instead of putting emergency things on the top, that they also have a line for important meetings. And not having meetings and events on the same thing, so it draws more attention to the meetings. There's gotta be a way. It's not working. I'm preaching myself. Number 2, workshops, again, when it came to the lab bill, I was lucky enough to be chosen to be on the residents end of the community. But what was done? It was documented, we had workshops, it was good. Nothing has been done in 6 years, 7 years with that compiled information. Just saying. As far as things being brought up for the community and for B&Bs and all that, you must make it clear that anybody that currently is involved with that, this is a revision, so they must be held accountable for the same things that you guys decide that are being put in place must be retroactive. That's the only fair way to do it, and legally, I've discussed it with attorneys, and it can be done. Because it's a revision, not something new. It's not up to the city solely to whether a community is gonna be annexed, and you guys have the right thing. Community don't want it, can't force it down their throats. It seems like the district was put together for the benefit of the developers. It's a food desert. There's no retail, there's nothing that was brought up, because again, I sat in on all those meetings and workshops. There is nothing south of Seventh Street that would draw anybody from the city or to come into town.
Thank you, Phil.
Hopefully it does some good.
And at one, we got.
No, we hear you.
I missed the HAC meeting, so I have no report, aren't you?
At the moment, I am, it's 5:09. Thank you for, this is from Bob Parker. I don't know, thank you for the opportunity to share concerns about the proposal to allow short-term rental businesses and private homes on largely residential streets in our city's historic residential district. My name is Robert Parker and I reside at 49 West Third Street in the historic district. Parking is a huge need and concern. The parking that is available now is not adequate for park visitors and neighborhood residents' needs. Any nice weather day, the lots on West Third Street fill, and visitors and residents alike often circle searching for parking spaces. There are many properties, historic district with this off-street parking that someone might want to turn into a for-profit rental business that could greatly exacerbate the present situation and greatly inconvenience residents. West Third Street alone, from Delaware to the Sailing Club, has 11 properties with off-street parking, plus the large drive, multiple parking spaces and garage behind 300 Delaware Street that is accessed from Third Street. Any one of the large number of these homes could provide accommodations for 4, 5, or 6 or more overnight guests. Those homes on Third Street with parking can accommodate 1 or 2 cars. Many guests of the large and special events would share the rental accommodations coming from different locations and by car. One rental, even with off-street parking, could bring 2 or 3 or more cars to a street. Many of these homes have 3 or 4 bedrooms. Many Airbnbs and such add sofa beds. The fabric of the community would be greatly changed. Short-term rentals in private homes and apartments bring well-documented risks in addition to the parking needs of overnight guests. I hope that they will be given proper consideration and the well-preserved residential historic district will continue to be preserved. Please confirm that this email was received. Thank you. Obviously, no more public comments. Since Phil, you're the only one here and you've already done yours.
Just one thing, if anyone would like the list of all of the residences that we know have off-street parking, I'd be happy to share it.
Okay.
How should we do that?
I think they could just email you and ask.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I don't know if that's a fine violation, but as I'm offering it here, I could send it to Antonina and you could send it out.
I think that's the best.
Oh, that might be the best
Yeah,
way.
yeah, I
Okay.
don't wanna get into any side conversation on it, but it's a very interesting list.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Just one other thing. I had never thought about this before, but that letter writer is correct. People using the park clog up that side of town, something serious.
Oh, Battery Park?
Battery Park, yeah. And the parking lot is helpful, but I really think they need more parking out there somehow, so we might wanna think about that. It's a really legitimate problem. It's almost worse out there than it is in the old city.
Covered parking with solar panels is the way to go.
Yeah, okay,
Generate our electricity.
there we go, make money.
Anything else? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
So I'm gonna have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much, people.